2x speed, and you just kind of, everybody just kind of like, I know what you're doing, I would too. But then one of the things they said to me early on was, I really like that you put subtitles on the things. I said, what? They said, yeah, didn't you put the subtitles on? I said, no, YouTube does that. So let me see if I can get out to the YouTube and show you an example of what I think they probably look like when they watch this.
Measurement trackers are 480s. 480 / 70 R34. And again, you can example we got with 480 millimeters, second height standard. So, watching on that one, I measured at 0.0566. Again, the same thing. I went out to the tractor with the measurement from the center out to the ground so that I knew what how much is higher than the truck.
So I think that's how they get watched quite a bit. But anyway.
Based on that, it's kind of interesting to go after.
But I was going back through and looking at the subtitles. It was amazingly good, even with some technical terms. I was really, really surprised at how well the subtitles, just the generic, whatever YouTube does to figure out how to put the subtitles on there. So that's probably helpful for them to look at as well, so to see that subtitles. So, at any rate, they were effective. Good, bad, why, I'm not sure, but there we go. So, students like the videos, subtitles, so forth. What are challenges and tips? So if somebody came to me and said, all right, if I'm going to go over and make videos, what should I be thinking about? What should I do? What are the challenges that I have to deal with? So camera presence, and I already talked about that with Dr. Nose's question. So where are you looking at? Okay, and when you're speaking, and engineers don't like to do this, we always like to stand off the side of the room and look at somebody else, but to be effective as a speaker, you really need to make eye contact and look at your audience. Your audience is the camera. And so you're making that contact and that direct contact at the camera, I think, is going to makes a big difference in the quality of it. Maintaining the appropriate speed. I'm not sure I've got that down pat. I think that, listen to my videos at 1.5 speed actually sounds pretty good. And so maybe I need to speed up a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, and show some excitement. That's where you get that personal connection. Show some animation. Don't just stand there clinical and rattle stuff off. Like, hey, you're excited about this content. I think that'll help engage students and bring them in. Helps me to visualize an audience. So rather than I'm talking to the camera, and again, that can end up being real clinical that you're just spouting off facts. If you visualize an audience, and it helps when you've got some teaching experience, obviously, because I have an idea when I start talking about stuff, here's where the students start to glaze over, and so I may need to slow down and do that again. So I've got that feel just from a number of years of teaching experience, so you know where to slow down and stuff like that, but that helps out. But visualizing somebody sitting there and you're trying to convince them of something or show them how to do something or whatever, that helps as well. Use multiple shorter segments. So a lot of my videos ended up really long, 20 to 30 minutes, and then it's kind of hard to find stuff when you don't want to go back through and find a piece of it. So if students want to say, I want to know how to do that one thing, they've got to kind of go through the video. The other problem is now you're handling really big files. And copying files, moving big files, storing big files is more pain than multiple smaller files. So that's what I would say, 10 to 15 minute segments I think are more effective than the longer type of videos. Thinking about what is visible on the screen and linked with that, what are they watching it on? Okay, so I'm sure a lot of the students on the bus on the way to lab were saying, oh geez, I was supposed to watch a video so we know what we're doing in lab. So they're sitting there with their phone on the bus bouncing up and down trying to watch a video. So what is visible to them? How much of that writing and stuff? And again, I probably didn't do a real good job of that because a lot of my writing was pretty small on the whiteboard. And I may go back, if I did these again, and think about keeping the writing, keeping some of that text a little bit larger and so forth. You lose the hands-on demos, and that was kind of a bummer to me because I would do a lot of stuff in class, even at lectures. I pass stuff around. I have an office full of toys that we pass around to talk about different machines and what we're doing with it and stuff like that. And so I do a lot of those kind of things. You lose that, okay, with that. We do an audio demo where I close the doors and turn the speakers up here with the sound meter and say, here's what 85 decibels sounds like in a room, and that experience, those kind of things you lose by not through the video. So that's kind of a bummer, and trying to think, maybe there's creative ways to bring that back in through other experiences. In terms of slide preparation, I think in general, I use a little bit more detail on the slides than I would in class. So the slides I use in class, I do more scribbling and stuff on the slides because I'm interacting with students, you know, we're going different directions and stuff like that. And so I leave a little bit more space, do a lot more scribbling on that. Leave room for the annotations, so if I run out of room in the classroom here, no big deal, I just go to the chalkboard right beside the screen. And so, you know, you can't do that on the video, you're stuck with what's there. So you got to kind of plan ahead and know what you're going to do in terms of annotation and make sure you've got enough room on the slides to be able to pull it off and make it happen. All right? Utilize animations, so I would do a lot of things in class. For instance, looking at pumps, you know, how different types of pump work. So I just have some YouTube links in my video or in the PowerPoint, and I'll jump out to YouTube like I did here. And that works in a classroom setting like this because I can still engage people, I can talk to them as we're going from there. But those get awkward on a video, and sometimes switching different platforms doesn't go well on video. And so what I found is it works a whole lot better to pull those off of whatever source it is, stick them in your PowerPoint, embed them as an annotation. And that seemed to work a whole lot better. So a lot of annotation. In fact, the studio people were like, man, you got a lot of annotations. These are really cool. Nobody's ever done that before. And that's a great idea to make your slides a little bit more lively, make the videos have a little bit more action and stuff going on. So that was a positive experience for me. So, all right, so general comments about the flipped classroom. How did it work? Did it work? Did it not work? Here's what my biggest disappointment was or concern is the limited contact that you have with the students. Again, on those weeks when I'm doing lab, I see the student for an hour and 15 minutes a week unless they come in to ask questions. So that's not a lot of contact with the students, and you really lose that. You know, are the students getting this? Are they engaged with the class? You know, are they engaged with me? And so I think, and that came out in some of the student comments as well, that I think that they were feeling a little bit disengaged like that. And I worked hard with the labs and everything to try to stay engaged. And I did hear from the students, and it wasn't on the written comments, but the students said, you know, the fact that you show up for lab makes a whole lot of difference than you just making videos and sending a TA to the lab. And so I think that having that personal connection, that I make the videos, but I'm the one that shows up in the lab to be able to work with them in the lab made a big difference as well. So I think that helped that situation. But it's still not a lot of contact time with the students. Attendance is dismal, all right, and I expected this to happen. A colleague in landscape architecture, Brian Lee, does a lot of flipped classrooms, and he said, you know, half time, you know, half the people are there. So just expect that. So they're going to get the idea that they can get what they need off the videos, and they don't have to show up for class.
But what didn't they show up for, the recitations?
The recitations they didn't show up for. I had some that didn't show up for labs.
Really?
So they got zeros in the lab. So, and I think those were kind of anomalies. But the first half of the course, I had everybody there. The second half of the course, I had a couple students. One got an A on the midterm exam, was doing real well in the exam, and just checked out. Never showed up for lab, never did anything the second half of the course. Did okay on the final and passed the course, but barely. So, you know, it was disappointing. So whether that was a result of the flipped classroom format, I doubt. But so I had some of that. But generally, the students did show for lab, but the recitations, no, they didn't show up. So you'd have at most 3/4 of the people there. Typically, is what I'd have for the recitations.
So was it required to go to the recitations?
No, I didn't require the recitations. So, yeah, so you know, my attitude is that if you want to learn, come, and you know, if the people there that want to learn, it's going to go better. So that's kind of the way I approach it. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. Maybe I should adjust that, Jim.
How many hours do you actually have to prepare for 1 hour of this video?
Of the videos?
How many hours has it been?
A lot, and boy, I can't answer the number. I can't give you a number to do that. It wasn't as much as it could have been because this is all material that I've done before. I've taught this class multiple times, so I've had the material fairly refined. And I just had to adjust it for that format, for the video format. So it wasn't like I was creating a lot of new material. I did spend a lot of time downloading animations and building them in the slides to make it look good. So that took a little bit of time. So I don't have a good number. That's a good question, and I don't know how to give you a good number of what the preparation would be. So it was a little bit.
Multiple recording or just one record of that?
No, I did multiple recordings. So it was. I started a couple weeks before the fall semester, and I got 3 or 4 weeks ahead, and then the longer the semester went, the less ahead I was. And so the last recordings I made, I was kind of looking at my watch and saying, when are you guys going to get them posted? They had to do a little editing on them, so you know, they got to be up by Friday, so Thursday afternoon they were finally there. So you know, I got a little bit closer, so a little better preparation would help that, so that you were in there. But no, I would go make multiple recordings, so I would do a couple weeks worth of recordings when they go up there, so they have times you want a studio. Yeah.
So if you keep doing this in the future, you're just gonna reuse the same videos, and like, so if you have to update some information on one part, how does that work?
That's a good
Remake
question.
the whole video, or
I
just-
thought about that. I thought about that going through, actually. And I was kind of careful to not reference 417 in case the course number would change, to not reference, the class, to not reference specific labs that we were going to do and stuff like that. So, so that they would be more generic, that I could plug them in different places. It would be possible actually to splice that, take that video and say, okay, I want to splice a little piece of it, and that would be really difficult to do. But I did think about that, rather than make it tied to this semester, this course, try to make it a little bit more generic so that they would be broader. And part of that was from those videos I made from Purdue, because we talked about that specifically, and that was their agreement. If I come up and make the videos for them, they would give me a product that I could use, and that was a generic product. So what you saw there was a blue background, that was the UK version, so what they actually put up had a Purdue background and their colors on it. So I gave that some thought. Now, a lot of it on the back is like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to use that anywhere else in this content. Yeah.
Was there like an extra cost associated with all this, like this department? Is it free for all professors?
Yeah, so it's free for all the professors. If you can schedule a time, you can walk in and do it. So that's a really nice resource that we have available.
Yeah, which is probably not true at other universities. I think it's
No,
university dependent.
Purdue spent a lot of money on those studios, and because they had to have technicians and so forth to do all the video editing, so they put a lot of money into those videos, so they were expensive. So, yeah.
Are there any other programs or classes that are associated in like the communications department that the students actually can learn how to do the video editing and make it as well?
And that's what Purdue actually did. So the technicians that they were engaging in their labs were students that were taking classes. Some of them was a class project and stuff like that. So they did. Here, I don't know. So this particular lab, there are other facilities on campus that will do video recording and stuff like that, and they might. But this particular studio is just as a service to the faculty. So that's the way it's
There are
set up.
similar resources for students.
Yeah.
So down
In the library.
In the library, a lot of these same types of resources are available for students to use.
There are also instructional design classes probably here in the education department or college.
The question of whether they link to some of these facilities, I don't know. That would make sense. I would hope it would. But I know Purdue did. Okay. Yes?
Did you use like quizzes or homeworks or anything to make sure the students were actually watching?
I thought about doing
the
it.
course?
I threatened to do that, and then just, you kind of run out of time with a course like this. It just took a lot of time and effort, and there wasn't any obvious glaring deficiencies when I came into a recitation. There were enough students that were watching the videos that I didn't feel like, okay, I need to punish the whole class and make sure that they get it. There were enough of them to do it. I knew that some of them that weren't. It's like, okay, they're going to suffer at the end. Now, if the whole class isn't doing it, they come into a recitation, I have to teach what was on the videos before we can do the recitation. Now that affects my time. And then it would be a different story, so then I would put it in. But no, I did threaten them quizzes, and I had actually thought of some questions, that weren't necessarily content related, but, kind of like what color shirt was I wearing or something like that, to make sure something along that line, just to make sure that they were watching the videos. But I did not have to utilize that. But I left that open and told the students, I may do this, and here's where it counts as homework.
Not certain, but there probably is a mechanism on Canvas where you can check to see who's watching.
Well, these weren't distributed. The videos were on YouTube, so they wouldn't necessarily have to go through Canvas to log it. So I could look at how many hits I had. I never did that. That was a good thing. I should have looked at that and looked at how many hits I had on the videos to see if there was more than 32. 32 students in the class. That would be kind of good. The other thing I realized with the classroom communication is key. This goes back to that distribution. So I've sent out a weekly email, said, all right, here's what's going on, and then some weeks it's a lab, some weeks it's a recitation. So do you come to lab? Do you come to recitation? Where is the lab? Because we use different facilities around here. So that was key to be able to have that communication. And again, I built this page in Canvas by week. So week 1, here's the videos, here's the assignment, here's supplemental reading. Week 2, here's the videos, here's the assignment. stuff like that. So I think that was key to keep them on there. Clarity on assignment due dates and electronic submission, I started doing that. And you know, that's one of those things that students aren't here a lot, so when the assignments are due, do they have to make a special trip to hand in a paper copy? So I started doing electronic submissions, and I had a number of issues with that, and including some academic integrity issues. A student that submitted something I couldn't read, I said, give me the paper copy so I can grade it. And I went to the paper copy, it's like, that's not what you submitted electronically. So we had to have a conversation about that, and so I said, all right, paper copy, sorry, you're gonna make an extra trip. So I'm old and grouchy, I can get away with that, I guess. But anyway, so those are things I think that utilizing some of those things better. In general, the students did well. So, you know, at the end of it, how were the grades? They come out okay, so they weren't too bad. So I was kind of pleased from that standpoint. Now, this is a 1 point, is this a sharp class, you know, and you do have differences in classes. So, all right, so students did well. Some student comments, I'll share some of these. And again, the first one that you write down is like, oh, I'm just going to read this one and walk away. Video lectures were the most interesting and highest quality out of all my time at UK. Yeah, they were very helpful to my learning, and I always felt I understood what was going on. So, hey, somebody liked it. That was good. Flipping the course is understandable, but I think majority of students did not watch the lecture videos, so maybe they had a little bit more insight than I did. I don't know. The lab allowed me to apply math to real problems that were not just on paper, and this is the value of why I did it. Okay, so that comment says, hey, I'm still getting the students in there, they have contact with that, they see the value in that, even this close to the end of the class. So, you know, having lectures online is useful for going back and reviewing notes. So I know I had at least one student who would come to my office to ask questions. She had printed out the slides, which I gave them electronically. She went through the lectures and she wrote on those slides just like she would in class. And so she'd bring that in and ask questions. So I know I had at least one student who was really, really engaged and utilized it very well. Some probably didn't even watch it. So these are some of the ones that were not so glowing. It was very convenient that there was recordings of lectures online, but I think that it would be beneficial for the class if an in-class overview of the topic was given before the labs to cover any confusions or misconceptions. I thought that's what I did on the lab. On the video, I don't know. So you know, it's one of those questions like, were you there? Or maybe I didn't communicate that, whatever. So I would have it so the lectures are not online. We would have to come to class. That way we can ask questions and get help. So there's a student that recognizes that there's that disconnect. I can't get the help because you're not there. You're not allowed to ask questions. I would have liked more class time to work through problems together and in person, since this would help with understanding the material. So this is somebody's learning style that doesn't jive with this type of an online format. So and you know, you're going to run into that. I wish we were able to have regular class meetups so that we can go over the homework and also have more homework problems done in class, or at least examples on the subject. And so, you know, and I think that's a product of the labs. So the weeks when we're doing labs, you know, they come to lab and we're not really doing that recitation. We're not working on the problems. And so I think that was a product of some of those weeks where they really felt like, hey, we're not doing any examples. And I try to put those examples on the videos, but that's different than working through them in person.
It's really kind of heartening, because otherwise we're just going to have all online universities, but this is...
Yeah, there's some value to personal contact. There is some value to it, absolutely, yes.
So why did you decide to do like the videos where they can see you? Like I've had classes where it's like Khan Academy and stuff like that, where it's just them writing and you can hear them on like a PowerPoint slide or something like that. Is that just, is there research on that helps more?
Well, there might be, but I was pulling that from my personal experience. Again, going back to what I've learned in church, some of the other videos and stuff that I was doing, it's that personal connection that makes a difference. And that was confirmed by the students. So a couple of students that told me and said, you know, your videos are good because we can see you and we know what's going on. And it's not just you talking over the slide. So they appreciated that from those students. You know, and maybe that was certain students, maybe other students are fine to just take down the notes and copy, you know, different learning styles, I don't know. So I'm sure there is research on there. I didn't do it. I was drawn from my personal experience and my passion in terms of public speaking, and I hate to do that stuff when you're not connected.
Okay.
So that's where that came from. Yeah, so there's somebody that wanted the in-class lectures because they learn that way. So, would I do it again? That's kind of the summary of this. Would I do this again? In 417, yeah, I probably will, even if the class size goes down. I spent a lot of time making those videos, and so, you know, I may adjust things a little bit. I may try to find some different things on those lab weeks to make it a little bit more connected with the students and do some stuff like that, so some adjustments. But yeah, I'm going to do that. Now, my classes that has 7 students this semester, am I going to do that? No, it's not worth the time that it takes to put those videos together. So, John, it does take a lot of hours, so for sure. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it was effective. I think it worked for this semester. I think I could make it a little bit better. I could improve on it, but that's what we got. So I'll leave it at that and see if there's any flipping questions. And I can give you some flipping answers, I guess, to go with them. But we discussed all the way through. More questions, yeah.
Do you, so, I'm sure you had office hours, but do you think if you had put like maybe a very specific like weekly office hour, like this is your after video office hour question asking period, do you think that would have helped address some of those?
Frankly, no. I don't think they would. And, I may have a different attitude than some of the other professors in terms of office hours. I don't put regular office hours on my syllabus. I could probably get in trouble for that. But my experience is students never show up. So they come when it's convenient to them, and that's not necessarily when your office hours are. Because I have an extension appointment, I do a fair bit of traveling, so it's very difficult to keep office hours. And so I'm always trying to communicate with students, okay, I'm not going to be here this week, I will not be gone this week, stuff like that. So that's kind of difficulty. So I'm kind of cynical on that. You might get a very different answer from somebody else that would have a different experience in terms of that in class. I don't know. I think if you're going to do something like that, you can't just show up and say, okay, I'm here, you can ask questions, because the students want to show up, they'll sit there. So if you do that, you've got to have some type of recitation, you've got to have something prepared that says, okay, let's do this example based on what you saw in the videos and try to draw them out, go a little bit deeper or something like that. I think that's what you'd have to do. But yeah, if you just show up and say you got any questions, some of the recitations I kind of did that, and I opened it up and said, was there questions, and it was just dead silence, and then I had an example problem prepared and I could do the example problem. So my experience is no.
Did you try any of those discussion boards that they have on Canvas?
I didn't.
Because I had a class where they required us, you had to do 2 posts on the discussion board and answer somebody else's question. And it kind of forced you to go through it. So
Did you do on that?
I don't know if that's an idea.
Did you find it helpful?
Yeah, some weeks I did. Other times I felt like I was just regurgitating something else that somebody else said, or
I
looking at
found it very
something.
tedious.
Yeah.
It becomes tedious, but at the same time, if people actually have questions, the professor is on there, so they answer questions too. So it just depends upon.
It forces you to become
Yeah.
involved at some point. If you're not going to do it in a personal classroom setting,
It was an online class too, so it forced you to get responses from the professor.
And that would be frankly a stretch for me, because again, I'm older than a lot of you, so the social media stuff is not my natural thing, where a lot of the younger students, that's where you guys live, that's where they live.
Well, it was just on Canvas.
But even that whole general, the electronic communication stuff, I'd much rather make a phone call. Somebody will text me a question, it's like, okay, I can text a 2-page answer to them, I'll call them back and answer the question. So they get annoyed with me because, okay, why are you calling me? I'm at the meeting. Why did you text me in the middle of your meeting? So yeah, there it is. So I think there's a generational thing on that, and it would be different for me. And I've got to learn, as an old professor, how to engage with the younger students. And I think this is the first step in figuring out how to do something like this. I think it can be valuable if we do it correctly. So, yeah. That was big. Anything else?